to become a disciple of the messenger that we have in this day and age that originated or came to us, that ambassador or emissary who comes down to the world of impermanence and the world of shadows and mirrors, this illusionary world, and who can teach us and tell us what reality really is. We want to find, the disciple must find the man who was in the cave with us, who managed to escape outside of Plato's cave and to see the world of forms and came back to tell us about. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الأئمة والمهديين وسلم تسليما السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear brother and companion Taimur.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me again.
God bless you. Today we're going to continue our conversation that we've had in the last couple episodes, which had to do with this idea that there are mysteries in religion. There's a goal that is in religion, that exists within it, that is more than just a person keeping a set of commandments or performing a set of rituals. That the purpose of religion in actuality is much greater than that. I think that a lot of this topic, which we discussed, has to do with the idea that one must find the truth in a world of falsehood, right? Jesus says, I am the way, I'm the truth, I'm the light. Jesus also calls himself the light of this world. I am the light of this world so long as I am in this world. There is this idea which we've spoken about many times within the episodes that we have recorded on this channel. That has to do with the fact that the Imam is the light of the time, or he is the truth of the time, and whatever the Imam says, his truth, is greater than even that which our eyes may perceive or our ears may hear. And that this idea that God or God's Spirit veils himself within this world, and it is upon us to, who are the children of God or born of the light of God, to be able to identify in the midst of all of this darkness where the light is, where the truth is, and to follow that.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
And you have examples in the Bible where Jesus is speaking with the Pharisees, and he tells them, the non-working scholars and rabbis that were against him, he tells them basically that, your father is not my father. It's because, you're of the devil, you're children of the devil, you're children of Cain, you're children of the darkness. That's why you don't recognize me, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this idea that there are two worlds. There are two things, right? And the things are good and evil, light and darkness. There are these opposites that are at play, truth and falsehood, heaven and hell, angels and demons. So there's these two opposites that are always at play with one another, and each and every one of them is trying to overcome the other. The world of darkness and the world of falsehood is trying to swallow the light. And this is something which is spoken about greatly in, for example, the Manichaean teachings of the Prophet Mahdi, one of the 124,000 unknown prophets and messengers, right? Or unknown to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam for the most part. He spoke about this idea how there were these two worlds, the world of light and the world of darkness, right? And that initially the world of light sent forward an emissary or a messenger of the light to the world of darkness, and the world of darkness and chaos basically swallowed it and consumed this light. It was seeking to overcome, to invade, right? To permeate all throughout the world of light. It had envy against it. It wanted to control that world. And the opposite is also true. You have the world of the light also wanting to light up this world and light up this darkness and to overcome it and to banish the darkness or convert it into light. So you have these two opposites that are constantly at play with one another, and it becomes the journey and the point of the believer who is choosing to become a disciple of a prophet or a messenger of a hujjah to identify which of those two realms he is existing in. And I think that without a shadow of a doubt, Jews, Christians, Muslims, everybody would agree with one another that we do not reside within the world of light. This is not the dimension or the realm in which we're existing right now. We are not existing in paradise at the moment. This is not heaven on earth. And you can tell that that's the case by the amount of suffering and impermanence that exists here in this realm. Everything is fleeting. Nothing that we want to hold on to will remain forever. It is a world that is absent largely of the light, with the exception of this concept that is recreated in every generation or in every time, and that is the concept which Manny spoke about, which is that the world of light is sending forward a messenger that comes and abides in this world of darkness and shines. And for the most part, most of those emissaries or those lights that come into this world of darkness are consumed by the darkness, so to speak, or murdered or killed or imprisoned or silenced, or their teachings are hijacked and changed.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And this concept of this duality when it comes to these two realms is something also that is not foreign to some of the other 124,000 prophets and messengers, as we spoke about in the episode of the prophets and messengers. We said that not all of them are going to use the same terminology when they're speaking to their nations, because each one is expressing to a people that hold a different set of references and cultural values and norms and words and sayings and understandings and sciences. And so, but the idea we find being expressed is always the same, right? So maybe there's a Judaic prophet or messenger, or you have the Messiah coming, or you have the Prophet Muhammad who is coming from one of these Abrahamic, branches of religion, Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, and they're describing these two worlds as, the present, the dunya, and the hereafter, right? The dunya and the hereafter, or they're describing them as heaven and hell, etc. Whereas you might have one of the 124,000 prophets and messengers, the likes of, for example, Plato, coming forward with this idea that there are these two worlds. There's a world of forms, right? And then there's the physical realm in which we exist, right? This world of shadows, lights, or smoke and mirrors, so to speak, right? So what Plato essentially was teaching and saying was that there are two realms. There's a realm that we think is the real realm, but what we perceive in it are merely lower imitations, lower reflections, lower shadows of forms that exist in a higher plane, a more perfect plane, right, that is more real than the plane that we are existing in now. And he clarified this and demonstrated the idea behind his theory in the allegory of the cave, where he described, and we'll just go over it real briefly, he described that there were these prisoners that had grown up in this cave their entire life. They were chained with their hands behind their back, right, and against a wall. And behind them, there was this flame which they never saw, right, which lit up a wall opposite to them in the middle of the cave. And there were some prison guards who would basically take these cardboard cutouts, right? And they would march them in front of the flame, and that would create this projection of shadows against the wall. So they would see shadows of different types of animals, shadows of different types of birds, of people that were marching in front of them, and the prison guards would speak and cause sounds to come forth, right? And they would create conversations and laughters and things that would happen between these characters that were being projected on the wall. They're essentially making a movie. And because the prisoners had remained their entire life within the cave, they didn't know any other reality other than that screen which was being projected to them on the wall. And they came to believe that that is reality. That shadow is what a bird really looks like. The sound which they were hearing is really what birds sound like. That is what people look like, right? Until one day, one of the prisoners manages to escape, and he goes outside of the cave. And you know the rest of the story, don't you?
Yes.
What happens?
He goes outside of the cave, and once his eyes adjust to the brightness outside, he begins to see a real bird or a real horse or all these things which he saw on the wall. He begins to see a truer, more real version of them.
Exactly. His eyes are blinded at first and they hurt him. But once his eyes adjust to the light, he now perceives colors that are more real than anything that he has ever seen within the cave. And he senses the dimensions, right? The shapes, the forms in its reality. Things which he never would have perceived within the cave.
So what they were seeing was two-dimensional also. It's interesting because they're seeing everything on a flat wall, and now he sees a third dimension. That was interesting.
Exactly. And so now you have this concept of what? A world of darkness, a world of light, a world of falsehood, and a world of truth, a world of a mirage, of fantasy, a world of change, all right, impermanence, and you have a world where everything is more perfect, more real. In the Judeo-Christian Islamic narrations, all right, especially the Gnostic ones, you have this concept of there being two lords, two gods, so to speak, right, that are ruling these different realms. You have a God who is good, all right, a Lord who is good, who is ruling the hereafter. He is a God of love and mercy, all right, a God whose creation is perfect. And you have the explanation that there is another deity, right? A fallen angel, so to speak, an imposter who thinks himself to be a god, but he is a less capable god. And we've referenced books that described this being as having the name of Azazel in Islamic literature. For example, in the book al-Kitab, which is a Gnostic book that is of an Ismaili Shia source. You also have other 12-verse Shia sources and even Sunni sources which speak about how when God created this physical realm, this physical dimension, he gave the task to a particular angel to come down and form this world, right? And so that angel ends up being revealed as Azazel, who ends up renegating against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But before he was given the title of being Abalis, right? Or Abal Khalq, or the father of creation, because he is the one that formed this world, and he formed this world in a cheap imitation of the higher realms which he was able to peer into because of his high degree that he had reached into, right? And this concept or idea is further confirmed in the temptation of Jesus Christ in the Gospels, where one of the temptations that Lucifer or the devil tempts, or Satan tempts Jesus by, is that he tells him basically, if you fall down and prostrate to me, if you worship me, I will make you king over the entire world, right? And he demonstrates that all of the kingdoms on the earth, he's in charge of. He's the one who appoints the leaders over them, right? So you have a world which is ruled by the devil, ruled by this angel who created it, and he created it as a cheap version, right, of the creation of the Almighty. And this matches exactly the teachings of Plato in regards to there being these two worlds: the world that is real, the world of reality, alim al-haqiqa, right? And you have this other world which is al-alim al-maddi, or this world here. And these two worlds, they go in opposite directions, Taimur. And you have many narrations from the Ahl Bayt that basically state that it is this physical material realm, this worldly life that we're in, that is not real. The Quran even calls it an illusion. And the narrations of the Ahl Bayt say that you can't serve both the dunya and the akhirah. You can't serve this world and the hereafter. If you try to please one of them, it leads you in a direction that is opposite to the other one. And so this concept of the opposites is established between these two worlds, the world of the hereafter and the world of this world right here. The world of the hereafter, this is the one that lasts forever. And this is the one where things in it never die. Immortality is granted, right? As to where this physical world, everything in it is fleeting. You can't hold on to it, right? Because its substance is forever changing. It goes from being, you go from having a body to that body basically growing older and wrinkly, and your strength goes away. Your beauty goes away, right? Your status changed. You go from being a small, short, cuddly little baby, helpless, right? And then you begin, your state changes, and you become stronger, right? You become taller, you become braver, you become more intelligent, more mature, more wise. And then you become in a state of perfection, and then you begin to wane away, or to dissolve away, or you begin to, basically fall apart and grow old and rot, and your hair, falls from your head, and your teeth fall out, and you end up in the end a corpse that is rotting away in the grave. And even when you get into the grave, what happens? You begin to dissolve, and your state changes from being that of a corpse, right, to basically dust into the ground. And even that dust changes once it becomes affected by the elements and by the creatures that are in the earth that consume you, and then you become part of it. And it's a never-ending cycle and a never-ending process. But this never happens in the hereafter. Why? Because as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ demonstrated once, when there was an old woman who came by, and he was joking with her, and she asks him, she says, Prophet, will I enter into paradise? And he says to her, well, there's no old women in paradise. Old people don't go into paradise. And then she began to cry. And then he immediately stopped her and said to her, people, when they go into paradise, essentially, they are in an age of perfection. There are some narrations said that it was the age of 33, and they remain at that age. They remain forever young, youthful for all of eternity, because that is the age, right? Or that youthful state is what all people aspire to be. Nobody wants to be a helpless child living for eternity in that state. Nobody wants to be an awkward pubescent, right? Or prepubescent, or toddler, or a teenager. Everybody wants to get out of that awkward stage, right, of imperfection, and to be at the height of their glory. And so for most people, that's around the age of 30. And so it is that age that people abide in that state forever young and forever beautiful. And all the inhabitants of paradise also have beauty that never goes away. There's no death. Everything that you love remains. There's narrations that state that this impermanent state, which is caused by death, that death itself manifests in the hereafter as a sheep and is slaughtered by God or by his messenger, thus creating this state of permanence for all times in that world, the world of forms.
It's true. This world, nothing stays the same, and everything is always changing. And all the religions, I think, speak about this world being an illusion and being
absolutely an illusion. It's described as being just games. It's fun and games. It's a world of illusion. It's a test. It's a trial. It's something that the believer has to be patient in for a short while before he passes along. It's nothing to be taken seriously. It's described as a person who takes this place as his permanent house, is described by the prophets as being someone who basically chooses to build a house on the sand, on the sea, basically, right on the edge of the sea, or on the sea itself. And obviously that house is going to sink. It's not going to stand there, right? Because it's not solid. And so why is this important to the topic of elevation? Which we were speaking about. What's the connection? There's a very important connection, because if the state of life in that world is one which is stable and permanent, then we have to say that all truth would reside over there, right? That would become the world of truth, because truth, by definition, is something which is unchangeable. Right? And so this world where everything changes in it, including our own selves, our bodies, our everything that we love, everything that we become attached to, it changes. Trees grow, trees fall, trees become wood that we burn in the oven or the fireplace. Trees become houses, houses rot, they fall down, etc. Everything is changing. Mm-hmm. And so also we cannot expect to find stable truth within this world around us. The sciences itself, or that which we're taught in this world to be truth, we have to come to the realization that actually most of it is false, right? There has to be a glimmer of truth within this world for it to stay stable and to exist in some way, shape, or form, right? Because the absence of all truth would mean the chaotic collapse of all of it, right? So it has to have a glimmer or a slight ray of truth, but the majority of it must be false because it is unstable. We cannot rely on it, right? And I think that it's fascinating because when we actually look in science, when we look into the scientific discoveries, when we look at the beliefs that are held by mankind that are outside of the realm of religion and outside of the sayings of the prophets and the messengers, we'll find that actually most of the time the people do not have a stable science. There is no stable truth that exists outside of religion. And there's many examples that can be given. For example, people for a very long time, their truth, which they believed in on the planet, was that the planet was flat, right? That Earth was flat. This was this was an unshakable truth that they had certitude in. This concept that the Earth is flat and that it is at the center of the universe, and it's actually the sun and the moon and the planets that are rotating around it. Later, we find that this truth changes. And now something which was given for granted is now the fact changes, right? And it becomes a thing where, no, the planet is actually a sphere. It's round. The moon and the sun and the planets are not rotating around Earth. It's actually the planets that are rotating around the sun. And then later they say, oh, actually the sun and the planets and everything is actually rotating, and they're traveling in the skies itself, even though we cannot feel it and see it. And you have other concepts like this idea that they used to have back in the day, for example, that disease is caused by unclean air, or that the air is bad. Mm-hmm. That bad air they used to regard as the reason or the cause for illnesses. And then later that theory was thrown out and it was replaced by this idea that no, it's not bad air that causes illnesses. There's no there's no such thing as bad air, but rather we discovered something called germs. And germs are the ones that are responsible for illnesses to take place, right? These bacteria and these germs and things of this nature. They told us back in the day that there was a dinosaur that was called the Brontosaurus. And then throughout time, that whole theory changed, that fact changed, and it became a thing where they said, oh, actually, there's no such thing as a Brontosaurus. Those bones that we once told you belonged to a Brontosaurus, it turned out that it actually belongs to something else. They used to believe that Pluto, and teach us in school, right, that Pluto was a planet. It was the 9th planet in our solar system. That changed. And it ended up being a thing that Pluto is not a planet. It's actually a dwarf and I don't know what. And they give it new terms and they changed its classification from being its reality. What we were taught that it was changed from one thing to another. They used to believe that reality was grounded, right? That the universe did not change. Then later on, they came out with the Big Bang Theory, and they said that, it all started out from nothing, and that, the universe is expanding after it was once, set and stable. Right. And so, as you can see through these few examples, and the examples are endless, Taimur, you can see that the things which we took for granted cannot be believed in this realm, that it's what we're being taught is constantly changing. Even historical facts are changing. Even facts that we take regarding medicines, for example. One time you might have, a substance which they consider to be beneficial for mankind, right? Mm-hmm. Like smoking at one point, they considered that to be beneficial, right? And they used to prescribe it as a stress reliever or to help with blood pressure and different things like this. The same thing with cocaine. gain. It used to be a substance which was good for you, and they used to put it in drinks, and they used to prescribe it for you. And now it became something which is damaging, which destroys you, which you cannot use. And the same thing with different materials that you can find in your houses. Old houses were built with materials that they deemed safe, and then they outlaw them. And so the perspective of science and of mankind on all things in this world is constantly, they call it evolving, right? But in reality, it's changing. Yes. It's going from one opinion to another. These changes which we find in regards to our sciences and our opinions on everything is something which does not exist in the realm of the hereafter. Right? And so it is the mission and the purpose, one of the purposes of finding the Hujjah and following him is to find that light of truth. As Jesus says, I am the light and I am the way and I am the truth. To find that truth, to find out what really is truth. To disregard, to become a disciple of the messenger that we have in this day and age that originated or came to us, that ambassador or emissary who comes down to the world of impermanence and the world of shadows and mirrors, this illusionary world, and who can teach us and tell us what reality really is. We want to find, the disciple must find the man who was in the cave with us, who managed to escape outside of Plato's cave and to see the world of forms and came back to tell us about. Right? Just like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who managed to escape out of this world and go on the night journey and become the length of 2 bows or less closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and traveled through the heavens, or the other messengers who did the same and were able to touch and communicate with and penetrate through the realms until they reached the realm of the real world, and to come back here and tell us about it. Because we cannot trust our senses. The prisoners have to, in order to benefit from the messenger, disregard and forget what their eyes are seeing and what they've learned and what their ears have heard, right? In order that they may focus on, as unbelievable as it may sound, the narration or the story that's given by this prisoner that managed to escape, this messenger now who came to us from the outside of the cave. And we have to follow him and trust his eyes above our own eyes, his ears over our own ears, his mind over our mind until he manages to lead us outside of the cave, because all those things that we took for granted in this world, they are false. And actually, it's interesting when we put side by side the words, right, of the messengers that even came 1400 years ago, when we put it side by side with the sciences or the so-called sciences that were being taught today, we find something amazing take place. We have that here, hundreds of years after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they're saying, and after the Imams, they're saying that the reason for diseases is this theory that there's air that's bad. The bad air is causing the sicknesses and the diseases, right? It's not having dirty fingernails, right? That have underneath it, for example, threadworm eggs or some sort of other type of germ, right? Or bacteria that is deadly. They tell us that it's the bad air. But that's not what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us something else. Then they change and they say what? That actually we discovered through microscopes that there's these living organisms that exist underneath the fingernails, right? If you don't wash your hands, there's these germs that are crawling all over your hand. That there's these bacterias and viruses that live at a microscopic level that your eyes can't perceive, or then that your ears can't hear, that are residing all over you. And that's the reason why you have to wash your hands, because if you don't wash your hands, these illnesses are going to affect you. Well, what do we have the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Imams from the Ahl Bayt having said, over 1,000 years ago? They said in several narrations from Abi Ja'far, from Imam al-Baqir and Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said that there are these shayateen, these devils that reside underneath the fingernails. And so the Prophet commanded his companions, and the Ahl Bayt commanded the companions that they should cut the fingernails, because they said that if they don't cut their fingernails, if they don't cut their mustaches, so it's not like overhanging, over draping and becoming filled with food as the person's eating, and then they're unable to wash it off, that these would be places where the devils would reside at, and these devils are known obviously to affect the human being. And so isn't that something that's interesting? It almost seems like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is describing what mankind eventually 1,000 years after the Prophet and the Ahl Bayt lived came to discover or find out. The Prophet is describing these bacteria or these viruses. So now the question becomes, who should I believe now? Should I believe that these are just low-level, low-intelligent beings that are creatures that are residing underneath our fingernails? Or should I believe that they're actually actual devils, as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam described? Was the Prophet using the word devils as just an allegory, or just a word to say that like there's something bad? That it's a bad thing? Or are these viruses and these bacteria and these germs animals of the devil world? Or are they conscious beings themselves? Is this the form of devils? Do they come to this world, in that shape or form? Because that's what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam described them as shayateen. And so you have that, and you also have that nowadays even there's these new theories in physics and quantum mechanics of worlds that are existing at such a small level. Before, for example, they one of the things that scientists had assumed and that mankind had taken for granted is that matter itself is solid. Well, that changed. And now they tell us something which our eyes can't perceive, and they want us to have faith in that. They say that actually nothing is solid, that actually on a quantum level or scale, everything is waves. It's not solid. Actually, it's waves. So its state is not one which is permanent. It's an illusion, as the Quran stated before. And they also talk about theories of worlds that are existing on a quantum level. And that's where you get the ideas behind all of these movies that they're putting out today, like, for example, Ant-Man and these things, right? Where deep down inside, there are worlds within worlds, and worlds that are even smaller than an ant, smaller than the germs or the viruses or the bacteria. So how do we know now that that's not exactly what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was describing when he spoke about devils that are residing underneath our mustaches or in our beards or underneath our fingernails if we don't keep them groomed and tidy? How do we know that there are not conscious beings that are existing, on a microscopic or on a quantum scale, that are conspiring consciously to destroy us or to lead us astray or to manipulate us in one way, shape, or form? And I think that that's a fascinating concept in itself.
It's super fascinating, and I think the choice between following the one who never changed their story versus following the one who's constantly changing their story is clear. I mean, the prophets and messengers, they've been saying the same thing from day one.
And they have been. And so that becomes the goal, to follow them. And there's this aspect, Taimur, which is really important that I want to touch up lightly on before we finish the episode and begin the next episode, kind of as a continuation of this. There's this concept that we have in religion of this key that the believer must attain. And that is the goal of the alchemist, or the goal of the disciple, right? To reach that level or that degree where he can have this key, which was given to the prophets and the messengers. You know, like in the Matrix, where you have this key maker, all right, who's the guardian of the key. That there's this key that affects reality in one way, shape, or form, and the person who has it has the keys to the heavens and the earth, like Jesus, peace be upon him, told Simon Peter when he said to him before he passed, he said to him, I'm giving you the keys to the heavens and the earth. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, right? Mm-hmm. So now he has this ability, all right, to make something or to say something, kun fayakun. He's able to say to something, be and it is. He's able to establish a law, to make a statement, right? To reveal a particular truth, and this truth becomes bound not only here, but in the world of forms, the world of reality, right? So it's like a superpower, a kind of a holy grail that has the capability to affect reality, and that this key is always safeguarded by at least one individual in every day and age, all right? And that is the Hujjah, that is the Simon Peter of the age, the Jesus of the age, the Prophet Muhammad, or the Imam. And each time one of them passes, he passes on this key to his successor. And these keys might even be given to believers who reach a very high degree or level. And this is kind of indicated in some of the narrations where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, my servant, obey me and I'll make you like me. I say to a thing, be and it is, and I'll make you say to a thing, be and it is. And in another version of the narration, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while addressing his servant, says, I want and you want, and it won't be except what I want. Give me what I want, and I will give you what you want. Fight me in regards to that which I want, and I will make you tired in regards to that which you want. And in the end, it will not be except what I want. And so in this narration, we clearly find that there are these two wills, these two opposites that are there. There's a will that's a truthful will, coming from the world of truth, which is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, the divine. And there's this false will, right, that belongs to the servant, or the one whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to draw near to himself. And God is telling him, obey me in what I want, because I want and you want. They're two different wills now, right? There's a true will, my will, and there's your will, which is a false will. It's a harmful will. Mine's a beneficial will. obey me and I'll make you like me, right? I will give you that which I have. You'll be able to say to something, be, and it will be, because you will be my caliph. You will be my successor. You will be my representative. You will be the light that is in a world of falsehood. If you do as I'm telling you to do and reach this state of perfection, this state of truth, where you're only speaking the truth, well, eventually your word will have the upper hand in a world of falsehood and chaos and impermanence. It will be your word that will last forever. It will be your word that will come into being. But if you hold on to your false will, in the end, you're just going to, be sad and you will suffer, right? In that which you want, make your will like my will, right? Align yourself with me and you will be like me. You will be an extension of me. You will be a ray of light that comes from me, and your word, you will be granted these keys, and these keys are the keys to manipulating reality in this false realm. You will have the power to say to something, it is and it shall be. You will be enforced by the world of forms. So whatever you say over here, don't worry about it, because it will be enforced over here in this world, or the world that really exists, the world of the hereafter, the world which you are an extension of, the world which you are a son of, right? The light or of the source itself. And so it is to know the truth, the purpose of wanting to elevate, but it's also to become a caliph of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a successor of Allah. That is the highest, right? That is the epitome of the journey. That's the destination, to become the complete human being, the mind to be perfected. And that's why Muhammad and the family of Muhammad alayhi salam, they reside in a realm, right? Or their souls extend to a realm which is the realm of the complete mind. And that's why the narration said that the highest level of the heavens, the seventh heaven, is the world of the mind, right? Where the mind is completed. And if you reach that realm of the seventh heaven, or that realm, then you are from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, and you have a complete mind, and you've reached the epitome of the journey. You've reached the destination. You become a true Shia of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. And the Quran says, and verily from his Shia is Abraham, when speaking about Imam Ali alayhi salam. And so that is the goal. So we'll stop there before we get into anything else more complex. But I just wanted to demonstrate the two states, these two worlds that exist, and kind of clarify and shine more light on the purpose of the destination or the journey, and shed a little bit of light on those keys, right? Or the chalice, or that holy grail, which should be obtained by the man who is truly a reflection of his creator and a true emissary from that world.
Thank you so much. I was like, this was a lot to contemplate on, and may it guide our footsteps.
God bless you, Taimur. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. What I just learned today is that the scientists are actually just studying the illusion. They're studying something which is fake and something which is always changing. And just looking at the history of science, as Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, demonstrated, the science itself is always changing. On the other hand, you have the prophets and messengers who for the last 10,000 years have been saying the same thing. They haven't changed their story. That's how you know who to believe and who's trustworthy and who knows what they're talking about. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said 1,400 years ago that we have shaitans under our fingernails. And if you just look at some of the images of these parasites and bacteria, they look like demons, they look like devils. And they even have the ability to control the host and to cause the host to put themselves in dangerous and precarious situations, just like demon possession. So I know who I'm going to listen to and who I'm going to follow, and the choice is yours to follow the messenger of God, the one who escaped the prison and came back to set us free, or to follow the puppet masters who are putting on a show for you. So if you're new to the channel, I urge you to go back and watch the hundreds of lectures that Al-Sadiq from Him His Peace has shared with us. Truly, I tell you, it is this knowledge that will save us from this illusionary world, and it will bring us to the permanent world, the world of bliss and happiness, and even transform this world into a better place. So thank you all for watching. Stay tuned to the channel for more videos, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.